and it's just a way for us to come together in a time when you don't often get the chance to, following a pandemic, where we can all join each other and be proud of our heritage and spread some patriotism. So thank you for joining us. It's lovely to see so many folks here. I hope that everybody's enjoyed the spread. We got a lot of hardworking people in the galley and on board to make today happen. We are not by trade hospitality specialists, but I think everybody is doing a really good job. So my first thank you would be to the crew of William Tate, as well as the captain and crew of James Rankin. Lieutenant Bailey, thank you for your help and sharing your crew with us to make this happen today. We couldn't have done it without you, honestly. I will talk a little bit about my crew and what we've done before today that kind of leads up to what this is for us. It's, we work seasonal ATON up and down, aids to navigation up and down the river and the bay, like I explained. And we have 262 buoys that we're responsible for. Now, the Coast Guard has 50,000 aids to navigation, so we're just a small sliver of that, but a very important sliver, I think, to keeping the global market moving, to keeping our deep draft vessels in and out of these ports, to keeping recreational vehicle vessels safe, and our commercial boaters pleased, right? So we do a lot of work to do that in the rain, in the sleet, in the snow. Our buoy deck team, which is everybody on board basically, is out here, with the sleet rolling down their sleeves and the wind blasting them in the face. And it doesn't really matter if those things are happening. We still have to get the mission done and completed. And there's hours upon hours and nights and early mornings that happen to complete this mission. It's not the most glamorous of the Coast Guard missions, so we don't always get some attention. So I'm just saying it a little bit louder, coming from William Tate, that we are very proud of the aids and navigation work we do, and we know that it has a large impact. Moving on to my thank yous, I would like to thank the Navy League and the General for the kind gift towards our spread today. They did give us some funding to help feed and nourish everybody on board today, so thank you for that. I'm moving on. I came off script here, so. Mr. James Horn, who's going to give us a historical background on today's event, is with us. So James, thank you for coming. Appreciate your time, sir. Thank you, of course, to my wife and daughters, my wife Sean and 4 daughters. It's really nice to have you guys on board today and share and showing off the ship. So I couldn't be prouder of you as well. And Captain O'Connell and Captain Collins, wherever you are, thank you for joining us today. Captain O'Connell right here, I appreciate you coming out and supporting. And lastly, but not least, I would like to formally welcome the 5th Coast Guard District Commander, Admiral Gilreath. Admiral Gilreath assumed the duties and command of the Coast Guard's 5th District earlier this month. In his position, he serves as the operational commander of all U.S. Coast Guard missions from North Carolina, South Carolina border to New Jersey, encompassing 3,000 active duty, reserve, and civilian personnel, and spanning 1.4 million square miles of oceans, bays, rivers, and several mid-Atlantic ports, to include the world's largest U.S. Navy base and the National Capital Region. Prior to joining us and prior to assuming command, Admiral Gilreath was the Personnel Services Center commander in Washington, D.C., where he's responsible for executing Coast Guard human resource policy, recruiting, assessing, assigning, developing careers, maintaining well-being, compensating, separating, and retiring 45,000 members of active duty and reserve workforce. Admiral, it's an honor to have you today, sir, and the floor is yours to say hello.
Thank you, Corey, and I really want to say thank you first to the crew members of the William Tate. The ship looks amazing. I appreciate everything that you did to get ready for today, to host all of our great partners here. I also want to thank the crew of the William Rankin as well for helping out. Also, that's great teamwork. You know, I've got 3 watchwords for the district: people, preparation, and partnerships, and you've really hit all of those today in making this event happen. So to our partners that are here today, thank you for being here. Aids to navigation is one of those things that doesn't get a lot of visibility until it does. And when it does, that's usually because something is missing, something happened, whether that be a hurricane or another major event. And then you realize that the aids to navigation system is really what keeps commerce flowing through the United States from the maritime side. And without it, you'd have ships aground in the bay, you would have vessels running into each other at night, not knowing which way they're going and things like that. And having this aids to navigation, the buoys, the lights, the day shapes, the ranges, all of those things out there allow our ships to navigate safely in and out of port every single day and keeps our mariners safe. So thank you so much for what you're making happen for the 5th District and the people of the United States. Really can't thank you enough for that. So that's really all I got to say. I just want to see this event go off successfully and safely, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Mr. James Horn, if you don't mind coming up and just giving a little historical relevance to today. And then following that, we will set what we call ATON detail. We'll clear the buoy deck. Everyone can stay up on the forecastle here, on the wings here, and up on the fly bridge. You're welcome to stay in any of those places, but we will clear the buoy deck for safety. And then get your cameras ready because we got to set up for a real big splash. Mr. Horn.
First, I'd like to say thank you for including the National Park Service in this event. For me personally, I think this is one of the most unique and interesting parts of the history of Fort McHenry, being able to come out here on the water and see the perspective that Francis Scott Key had over 200 years ago for this event. To understand how Francis Scott Key gets here in 1814, we have to realize that we are 2 years into our second war with Great Britain. Yes, the War of 1812 does not just last in the year 1812. But 2 years into that war, the United States is not doing well. So poorly, in fact, are we doing in that war that just a few weeks prior to this event, our nation's capital, the public buildings, the White House, the Capitol, the Treasury buildings, were invaded and burned by British forces. The United States is really facing a dark moment in this war, and the citizens of Baltimore, living in the 3rd largest city at the time, 50,000 Americans living there, also had one of the nation's most important ports at the time. And when DC is burned, all eyes turn towards Baltimore, knowing that this, strategically, was the biggest target that the British could have in the Chesapeake Bay region. And facing that adversity, Americans and Baltimoreans were faced with a big question. What do you do when the nation is facing such a dark hour? Do you give up? Do you leave? Do you surrender? Or do you come together as a community, see to the defenses, and see how you can keep the nation moving forward? And we know that the community does the latter. 15,000 Americans pour into Baltimore City. Regular soldiers, militia, citizen volunteers, all to the defense of Baltimore, to make sure that the country will live to see another day. 5,000 British soldiers land at North Point. They march to the north of the city, where they are halted by 15,000 Americans, well entrenched. And they know that they cannot take Baltimore without the help of the British Navy, the most powerful navy at the time. That navy comes up the Patapsco River, looking to see to the destruction of Baltimore. In order to get to Baltimore, they must get past the defenses of Fort McHenry. As that navy comes up the river, they're going to be greeted by a truce ship. And on that truce ship was an American lawyer hired by the American government to meet with the British High Command to negotiate for the release of a prisoner of war. a Dr. William Beans, a civilian who had been taken prisoner by the British shortly after the burning of Washington for, quote, harassing British troops. Now, the American government felt that taking civilians as prisoners of war was not a good precedent to set, and thus we must send an American lawyer, not a diplomat, to meet with the British to convince them to release this civilian from their custody. It's about this location that Key meets with the British High Command and commences those negotiations, and he is successful in gaining the release of Dr. Beans. However, during the negotiations, the British realized that they were rather friendly with Mr. Key, they were rather friendly with Dr. Beans, and they might have revealed some of their plans for the attack on Baltimore that is coming. And thinking that it is not sound strategy to let these men sail back into the city and perhaps share what those plans are, they tell Key and Beans, you are free to go after the battle is over. So they are not prisoners, but they are detained in this location. And Francis Scott Key, who served in the Maryland militia, was witness to the Battle of Bladensburg, the disastrous battle that led to the burning of Washington. He is now forced to sit out here with great anticipation, probably a lot of anxiety, wondering what is about to happen, knowing that the world's most powerful navy is about to attack Fort McHenry, the only defense that stood between them and the destruction of Baltimore. And 1,200 defenders on the peninsula of Fort McHenry would prepare as the British fleet moved forward. And what Francis Scott Key would witness from this point was a 25-hour bombardment with over 1,500 bombs and rockets raining down on Fort McHenry. For 25 hours, he was forced to sit here and wait and wonder what the fate of Baltimore and those 50,000 citizens was going to be. Now, during the night, there was a large storm that had come through. And through the darkness, the rain, the smoke, the fog, Key looked towards Fort McHenry for any sort of sign to tell him who was winning the battle. The most important sign was seeing what flag was flying over Fort McHenry that night. But that 17 by 25 foot storm flag that was flying was very hard to see because of that rain, fog, and smoke and darkness. However, he knew that so long as those British bomb and rocket ships continued to fire at the fort, that the Americans still must control it. He wrote about this later, saying, the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. It's an eyewitness account to this battle. The next morning, the rain has cleared, the sun has started to break through the clouds, and those bomb and rocket ships have ceased firing. He knows that this means the battle has ended. And he looks towards Fort McHenry. He squints to see what flag is flying over the fort. And his heart probably sinks into his stomach when he watches as that 17 by 25 foot storm flag is lowered from Fort McHenry. Surely this is a bad sign. Surely this means that the British have won. The Americans are giving up the fort. But to his great surprise, one last shot is going to be fired from Fort McHenry. Some call it a final shot of defiance. And an even larger 30 by 42 foot garrison flag, a flag that was ordered so that it would be so large that the British should have no trouble seeing it from a distance, was raised above Fort McHenry. And with that moment, as the dawn's early light hit that flag, Key knew that Fort McHenry had withstood the bombardment and Baltimore had been saved. So moved was he by this moment that he began to take out a piece of paper and write down some thoughts on the moment. And when he returned to Baltimore, he turned those thoughts into a 4-stanza poem called The Defense of Fort McHenry. Later it's going to be put to music and called the Star Spangled Banner, named after the very design of that 15-star, 15-stripe American flag. This song spreads like wildfire throughout the United States. It goes viral, if you will. And part of the reason it does this is because this moment is really the first time in American history where someone has taken what the American flag means to them and put it into words and sees it as a national symbol. Because the Star Spangled Banner is not even really about the flag. It's about what we as Americans do underneath that flag. And what so moved Francis Scott Key in this moment in 1814 was the story that in America's darkest hour, after one of the greatest tragedies in American history, civilians, military, volunteers put their differences aside. They came together, and as a community, they decided to do the most patriotic thing imaginable, and that was to help their neighbor. That was to help the fellow citizens of Baltimore make sure that their town would not see the same fate. And we see that story happen over and over and over again in American history. That when we are at our darkest hours, when we have our backs up against the wall, the most patriotic thing that we can do is to come together and help one another. So folks, I'm really excited to see this buoy drop. I hope you are too. I'm going to turn it over to the Coast Guard.
Really well done, James. I appreciate that. I think everybody else does as well. We're going to move forward and clear the buoy deck. William, Tate, set Aton stations.